Hi, I'm Arundel, and welcome to the next chapter in my life. I make games, primarily computer games. For years, I've been part of Wube, the company behind the genre-defining game Factorio. I've worked on the base game of Factorio, but my main impact has been on the Space Age expansion, an expansion that is said to be a candidate for the best expansion ever made, and I'm very proud of my work on it. Now, I'm leaving Wube to make my own games. I have a lot of really interesting game ideas, and I want to make them real. In game development, there's this concept of explore versus exploit, trade-offs where you try to find an optimal balance between spending time on exploring new ideas and focusing on the ideas that you already have. One of the pitfalls with experimentation-led development is that it can be a bit aimless. Just testing small ideas around the gameplay that you already have, hoping that something good grows out of it, can lead to issues where you miss out on big ideas or the project lacks a cohesive vision. I prefer to start by thinking of the bigger, bolder ideas, building a clear vision of what the final game might look like based around those ideas, and using that as the main starting points for additional rounds of exploration. That way, a strong creative vision is still at the core of the game, but additional ideas can also be explored. My current problem is that I have a lot of these big ideas. They're fleshed out with game design documents to help pin down that vision. They have mood boards, plans around specific mechanics and depth of gameplay, and many of them even have proof of concept projects running in a game engine to test if a particular idea is even practical. Having a lot of ideas can make it hard to pick one. If I narrow down the ideas to just the ones where commercial success is most likely and development effort is not too extreme, then I get 11 strong candidates. With other criteria like which ones can I make the most progress on as a solo developer, which ones I'm most motivated to work on, and which projects have relatively light asset requirements, or at least the assets that are required to be reused efficiently, then I can get that list down to the top 2 remaining game ideas. So what are the remaining top 2 games? The first is a deep turn-based tactical game with rich lore, a lot of secrets, and a few puzzle elements. And the second one is an exploration-focused puzzle platformer with a lot of secrets and climbing-based combat. I don't want to go into details with either of these ideas, at least not yet, so I'll keep this high level. But with these top 2 candidates, my next task is to try to identify any serious blockers to potential progress. These can be things like identifying technological barriers, unforeseen massive requirements for art assets, core gameplay that just isn't fun, or cursed game design problems. For example, if a game idea requires simulating billions of people's lives in detail, then some obvious blockers would be the simulation performance and data storage, and there's not much point starting a project like that unless you can find adequate workarounds to those sorts of problems. For the turn-based tactical game, most of it has a very solid, straightforward plan, although there are a few twists. If I'm not careful with how the character or character animations are made, then the art requirements could spiral out of control and require a large art team. If that's what's required, then so be it, but I'd like to keep the requirements more manageable if possible. Also, while first and foremost it is a single-player game, I do think that a variety of multiplayer side modes could be fun, and for multiplayer to be practical, it puts some constraints on the other gameplay systems. If you think of a game like Into the Breach, the rules for the player and the rules for the enemies are very different, and this asymmetry could make it difficult to add a player versus player mode to that sort of game. At the moment, I'm exploring the second option, the puzzle platformer. It's a third-person game and has climbing-based combat as one of the key features, and if that makes you think of Shadow of the Colossus, then great, you've got half the idea already. The game idea has more areas of uncertainty than the other one. I have a lot of specific ideas about the character, how the character controller works, and how they interact with climbing on things that are moving and flexing. I already have a prototype to prove the viability of these ideas, and while the animations are still a bit clunky, it's a solid proof of concept. The next problem is the art assets. The game has the highest requirement on art assets, which is a good and a bad thing. It's a bad thing because not only does everything need to look great, but also be designed with climbing in mind, which is a lot more work. It could be a good thing though, because if this is the project that I make first, I can probably use the art assets in most of the other games in my top 11 list. But the same is not true the other way around. If I make the other games first, I probably can't use those assets in the climbing game because they weren't made with climbing in mind. Unfortunately, the turn-based tactical game is not one of the ones where I'm likely to be able to reuse the art assets, and that's because the requirements are so different. If we think of a tree in the climbing-based game, it needs to be huge and it's primarily seen from below. Whereas a tree in the turn-based tactical game primarily needs to not obscure any of the player units or enemies, so it needs to be small. I don't want to spoil the twists and hooks that I have planned for these game ideas, but I can list some other relevant games that I like, and maybe you'll see some patterns. So for the turn-based tactical game, the games that I like are Vandal Hearts, Shining Force, Inscription, Into the Breach, The Last Spell, and Mugenics. For the puzzle platformer game, the games I like are Shadow of the Colossus, Blueprints, Noita, Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver, Chants of Sonar, and Antechamber. There are also some games that are relevant to both projects, and these are Baba Is You, the Cube Escape games, and other escape room or investigation style games. So, why do I feel like I can make a lot of progress on my own? Well, I'm good at rapid prototyping and finding new ways of doing things. I have most of the required skills to make a lot of progress. Professionally, I've been a programmer, a concept artist, head of development, and art director, and I also have a lot of experience with the broader game production pipeline from modeling, texturing, rigging, animation, particle effects, shaders, and even compute shaders. I don't intend to make the games completely on my own. At least, I think I'll need someone else to help make the music, because while music is something that I'm interested in, I don't feel like I have the time to learn the necessary skills while maintaining my other skills. At some point, I'll need to bring other people onto the project. I've managed companies before, and I'm a good project manager, so I have no problem doing this. It's just that now isn't the right time to start hiring people. It makes more sense to explore my two leading game ideas, find the best candidate, take that idea to more of a functional prototype, lock down the scope, and only bring people on when the requirements are well defined, not only for this project, but ideally to be able to keep them working through to the next project as well. If or when I start hiring people, then that's also the time that I can look into things like Kickstarter for funding. For now though, I can work more efficiently on my own, just burning through my savings. On that note, if you'd like to support me by donating on Patreon or PayPal, then obviously that makes a huge difference right now. Also, if you like this video or like where I'm headed, then hit that like button. Subscribe for future updates where eventually I'll show actual content instead of just talking about high-level concepts. I have a Discord server with about 35,000 people. It's a friendly space and you're welcome to join. Also, if like me you're not really a fan of social media, I also have a mailing list sign-up form that is only used for the biggest announcements like the game is being released on GOG and Steam. All the links are in the description. Thank you for listening.